On your knees, boy. The command cracked through the crowded terminal like a breaking branch in a silent forest. Gate 17, moments ago a blur of rolling suitcases and impatient boarding calls, stopped mid-breath. Conversations died in people's throats. Officer Brent Wallace stood planted in the middle of the concourse, legs braced wide, service weapon aimed directly at Daniel Brooks. Travelers froze, clutching coffee cups, phones, children's hands. Daniel, medium brown skin, mid-40s, dressed in a tailored gray suit, didn't move. His eyes flicked once to the black barrel pointed at him, then back to Wallace's face. His briefcase rested by his right foot, hand curled loosely over the handle. You match the description of an armed suspect, Wallace barked, voice carrying over the stunned silence. He advanced 2 steps, boots thudding against the tile. The crowd rippled, passengers drawing back instinctively, some fumbling for their phones. Daniel's voice came low and measured. You're making a mistake. Wallace smirked, tilting his head just enough to project control. The only mistake here is you thinking you belong past security. He motioned sharply with the gun toward the floor. Down. Now. Phones were up everywhere now, their tiny red lights winking in the fluorescent glare. The air tasted metallic with tension. Somewhere behind the gate desk, a boarding agent ducked out of sight. What happened in the next minute would decide whether this terminal became just another travel inconvenience, or tomorrow's headline. Wallace's tone sharpened. Face down. Hands behind your head. His stance was that of a man convinced his authority was absolute. Daniel stood still, not a tremor in his posture. A child's cry echoed from the far side of the seating area, quickly hushed by a parent. A woman near the boarding line whispered, "He hasn't done anything." Wallace's eyes snapped to her, the kind of stare that made people shrink away without another word. Inside Daniel's mind, an old memory uncoiled, another airport, another uniform, another officer whose assumptions nearly ended in tragedy. He remembered the adrenaline pounding in his ears back then, the flash of fear in his wife's eyes. That day had changed him. Now, years later, he refused to flinch. A TSA supervisor, middle-aged with a thinning hairline, edged into the scene, palms raised slightly. "Officer, maybe we should." "Step back," Wallace cut in, his voice ablade. "I've got this." The supervisor hesitated, then retreated, glancing nervously at the phones capturing every second. Daniel exhaled slowly, feeling the sting of 100 unseen judgments. The murmurs swirled, the weight of being assessed as a threat before being seen as a man pressing on his chest. Yet he knew, if he held his ground, the truth would turn the tide soon enough. The TSA supervisor hovered nearby, but another figure moved with more certainty. From the cluster of onlookers, a tall man in plain clothes stepped forward. His eyes were sharp, scanning the scene in a single sweep. For a fraction of a second, a badge glinted on a chain before disappearing beneath his shirt. "Wallace," he called, voice even but carrying authority that made people listen. "Holster your weapon." Wallace's head jerked toward him. "Who the hell are you?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he turned his gaze on Daniel. "Chief, you okay?" The word landed like a dropped glass, sharp, unmistakable. Heads turned. Murmurs rose. "Chief," someone whispered. Wallace blinked, the smug certainty slipping from his features. "Chief," he repeated, the word awkward in his mouth. Daniel finally moved, slow and deliberate. His hand dipped into his coat pocket. Wallace's knuckles whitened on the grip of his gun. From the pocket, Daniel drew a black leather wallet. He flipped it open in one fluid motion, revealing the gleam of a gold badge and the unmistakable lettering, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Director's Office. "You just aimed a loaded weapon," Daniel said, each word carrying weight, at the FBI's chief of field operations. Gasps cut through the terminal. Wallace's grip faltered. But the lenses kept rolling, and the story was no longer his to control. For a beat, Wallace stood frozen, the noise of the terminal pressing in. This can't be real, he muttered, voice stripped of its edge. Agent Miller, the man from the crowd, pulled a radio from his belt and spoke into it without breaking eye contact with Wallace. "Control, we have an officer engaged in an unlawful armed threat against a federal chief. Secure this scene now." Two airport police officers hustled in, eyes darting between Wallace's drawn weapon and Daniel's badge. One reached gently for Wallace's arm, pressing the muzzle toward the ground. The other positioned himself between Wallace and Daniel. "You profiled him because he's black," a voice shouted from the back. The crowd's murmurs swelled into open outrage. Wallace's mouth opened, but the airport supervisor's sharp tone cut him off. "Save it for internal affairs." Miller looked to Daniel. "Your call, Chief. Press charges now, or let it go." Daniel's gaze swept the semicircle of faces, some angry, some anxious, a few quietly grateful. "Not here," he said finally. "But we'll be talking." Phones lowered slowly, but the tension in the air remained electric. Within the hour, Wallace was escorted through a staff-only corridor, sidearm and badge surrendered. The videos were already flooding social media, hashtags multiplying by the minute. Daniel remained at gate 17, seated near the wide windows overlooking the tarmac. The sun had shifted lower, spilling warm light over rows of planes. Passengers passed by with a new caution, a few offering small nods or murmured thanks. Miller returned with a new boarding pass in hand. "They're clearing your flight now," he said. Daniel stood, picking up his briefcase. "They're not clearing it for me," he said, voice calm but carrying. "They're clearing it for everyone who's been told they don't belong." He walked down the jet bridge without looking back. The crowd slowly dispersed, but the air seemed to hold on to what had happened, as if the truth had settled into the walls, waiting for the next time it would be needed. Some badges are worn on the chest, others are carried in the way a person stands when the world turns against them. Daniel didn't need to shout or fight to reclaim his place, he let truth speak louder than fear. In a world where assumptions can be deadly, the courage to stand your ground is a quiet force that changes everything. Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more stories that confront injustice with resolve.